Here we go. Video 3 of this course. Accountability. Oh, that's a hard one, right? That's a hard thing to implement, to live by. It's a difficult one. But here's what I'm going to teach you about it. The accountability in the task matrix is broken down by RACI. Now, we've also seen LACI. That's another way you can talk about it, and that's totally fine too. You can be either lead or responsible, accountable. It doesn't matter how you use the terminology. I started with RACI, and so I ended up with RACI, but you could make it LACI, right? Now, what does it mean? Let's look at this task matrix. Let's start with the fact that there's an ante-litem notice in the DOE matter, and the person responsible is Juji, but the person accountable is Sam. That means that Juji is responsible for doing the work, but Sam is overseeing Juji's work. Accountability means that the buck stops with you. If something goes wrong with the motion, Sam is responsible. Now, because this is an ante-litem notice, there's going to be some information that has to be given to the client, in the sense that the client has to be informed about the fact that the ante-litem notice went out. And this is why we incorporated this way, right? R is responsible doing the work. A is accountable. The buck stops with them. They are supervising. C means conferral, who you need to confer with regarding the substance of the work. And I is someone that needs to be informed. I did add a column for status. Sometimes I add it, sometimes I don't. It really depends on the type of practice you have, but that could be an option. Somebody wants to say it's pending, or I'm working on it, or stuck, or whatever. And then you're going to have your internal deadline, and you're going to have your external deadline. Similarly, you're going to see, for example, that you have an open director's request, which is number 3 on this sheet. Opens record request to Parker Police in the matter of Doe. The person responsible is actually Patricia, and the person supervising them is Clark. You're going to have to confer with Juji, who seems to be an attorney, and you're going to keep Sam informed because he's the MAT partner in charge, and we want to keep him informed of this in this particular case. It's not always the MAT case that Sam has to be informed, but this time this is how it went down. I would like you to notice that one way that I have used the responsible and accountable is that there is a bit of a hierarchical system in law firms. It's just the way it is. So for example, in that particular situation, what I would assume is that Clark is actually the senior paralegal and that Patricia is the junior paralegal who's doing the work. So the junior paralegal is putting out the request, but the senior paralegal is the one that's making sure those requests are going out in a timely manner. And that's why they're conferring with the attorney in charge, just to make sure, hey, it went out, and they're keeping another attorney, the partner in charge, just informed that it's ongoing. Now, you don't always only have to incorporate people that are within your team. You're going to have, for example, for the policies expert report in the matter Medusa, you're going to have Mr. Expert. Mr. Expert has to be is responsible for writing a report on policies. And the person who is accountable is the partner in charge of the case, Sam. But then there's going to be some conferral with a doctor expert who presumably in this case needs to provide some information or input to Mr. Expert so that they can complete their report in a more full manner. And this is a really good thing to do while you're having conversations because it helps to keep track of who needs to be in contact with who. Taking you back to my little demo from earlier, we can now look at these columns that I told you before not to look at it. Don't look at it. Okay, so let's start here. We're going to have a Shifkin-Cartier matter, and there's a review a scheduling order. So the partner is going to be reviewing the scheduling order. Now notice, the partner is here twice. Because if the partner is doing work, he's the one actually doing the work. But if he's accountable, he's also the person that the buck stops with, right? Like he's the partner in charge. And so it can be that responsible and accountable are the same person, especially when you get to higher echelons of the hierarchy within your law firm. The person you're going to confer with is the client, likely in this case because they need to be okay with the schedule, they need to be okay with who you picked for deposition, so on and so forth. And then sometimes you also want to keep somebody else informed, usually as a courtesy. It can be just a courtesy. It can be, if it's more strategic, it would probably be a conferral, or it could be a procedural requirement. Like if you need to inform somebody of something, then that might be a procedural requirement. So in this case, it would be the relationship partner. Now, you would put names in there, but I'm putting it like this so that you can understand what the hierarchy looks like. Maybe there's a partner that has a particular relationship with a client and you want to keep them informed when big stuff happens in the case so that they can massage that relationship or not be caught off guard. Here you're going to see what I was referring to earlier. Shifkin-Cartier again, generate a list of deponents for a scheduling order. You're going to see that the senior paralegal is the person accountable for this project and them and only them, but that the paralegal, maybe a more junior paralegal, is actually responsible for getting the work done. And again, here we see that we have an internal and external deadline, just a little review. You see that there's actually 12 days between those two events, which is very nice and comfortable. Here you're going to see the associate maybe is responsible. You would put the name of the associate. The associate is responsible for drafting the scheduling order, but the person accountable for that scheduling order is the partner. And yes, this scheduling order is the same scheduling order that will then get passed on to the partner, and the partner will finish reviewing it, will confer with the client, and will make sure that the relationship partner is in fact informed. And you will see that their internal deadline is 3 days before the external deadline, with the hope that it will be ready for filing on the external deadline. You don't have to change the day that it gets filed. It'll just be ready to go, right? Just boom, loaded, locked and loaded, ready to go on the day of. I'm going to write a little something else here because this might be helpful. So Shifkin-Cartier again, we're going to be issue subpoena to Mr. Nosy Neighbor. Okay, the person who's going to issue the actual subpoena is going to be the senior paralegal. And the person who is accountable is going to be the senior associate. But you don't have to confer with anybody, but in some jurisdiction, you do have to inform opposing counsel. And so you're going to put it in there, hey, you need it when it goes out, you need to send the notice to the other side so that they know that it happened. You're going to have an external deadline, or you say, look, I want it to be done by 10/30/2023, but because we are now understanding the livable law method, it's going to be done. It's going to be drafted by 10/25/2023. And that is issuing the subpoena. And if something needs to be drafted ahead of time, now you know what it would look like, right? You would have Shifkin-Cartier draft subpoena, you would assign it to somebody, you'd have an internal and external deadline, so on and so forth. Look at this. Look at this. You know the rules, and now you can tell me what's wrong with this. Oh my gosh, everything's wrong with this. Everything's wrong with this. First of all, deposition prep. Of whom? Of client? Of client. Let's say of client. Okay, we're not going to put just deposition prep of client. That's just ridiculous. And then we say, well, who's going to do that? Well, let's just say Eric is going to be doing this, and Sarah is going to be overseeing it, and we need to confer with, well, obviously you're going to have to refer with the client because they're going to have to be there, okay? And maybe that's it. We don't need to tell anybody else about it. We're going to put the date. This is actually, the external deadline is probably the date that you want it done by for sure. So it might be, for example, it might be the day before the actual deposition takes place. But then you want to make sure that you have this schedule and say, okay, look, we're going to try to do this at least 5 days ahead of time. Now, because it's a deposition prep, maybe you'll do it the day. This is the one place where I would give you, okay, fine. The external deadline is the same as the internal deadline because the external deadline is an internal deadline in the sense of nobody's counting on it and wanting you to do this prep. In fact, the opposing side would be happier if you didn't. But those are the type of situations where your internal and your external deadline could be the same one. And then here again, you have draft responses and objections to RFP. We're going to say Juju's responsible for this. Eric this time is going to oversee it. We do definitely need to talk to the, we're going to say the general counsel of client, right? Because they need to help us work on this. We are going to tell the relationship partner about this because it's kind of a biggie that this is going to go out. And then you're going to have, look, our responses to Discover only due on 12/1/2023. So, you got it, right? If If you're drafting responses and objections to RFP, does somebody else have to review them? Maybe, maybe not. Let's say that in this particular case, Juji does not have to have anybody review her work. That's fine. Then we're going to give, but Thanksgiving is coming up, right? So we want to make sure that we don't start making a mess of the schedule. So what you would do in this case is that you would take a look at when Thanksgiving is going to be and make sure that 12/1/2023, you count 3 or 4 days before that. If it falls into a holiday or a weekend or whatever it is, you work that in and you provide an earlier date so that you don't have a time crunch. Honestly, what I would do if I was doing something like this, and I'm seeing that I'm moving into the 3rd, 4th week of Thanksgiving, maybe into a weekend, I may even tell them, hey, you know what, Juji, would you like to get it done by maybe 11/20? And that way you don't have to worry about it crushing with Thanksgiving or whatever it may be, right? So those are the type of conversations you're going to have. And then once you're done with that, you could beautifully filter, and then you can start seeing like, okay, 10:25, we're good. Nothing seems to be we don't have a big traffic jam of stuff happening. And also here we're feeling better because there's somebody responsible for everything. There's someone accountable for every single task, and we know what everybody is doing. So I could do clear all. I say, okay, I want to see what Eric is up to. And you say, okay, well, Eric's got something on the 4th, 5th, 10th, 15th, 20th. He's got work coming at him. And there you go. And here you go. You now know what RACI and LACI stand for: responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, or lead, accountable, consulted, informed. They're flipped under LACI, which is a little bit annoying in the sense that lead is the person who is in charge and the buck stops with them, and then accountable is the person doing the work, which is a little confusing. Whatever you call it, somebody does the work, somebody supervises the work, somebody has to be conferred with, and somebody has to be informed. And the difference between consulted and informed is that consulted assumes that information will come back from them. Informed means that you give them information, but you're not expecting a response. This is a slightly different way, maybe a more compressed way, and I just wanted to show you as an alternative example of how you can set up a task matrix. You're going to have your task, you're going to have your case, you're going to have RACI all in one column, and you can write them down like that, right? Juji accountable, Carl responsible, Mary is informed. And if you want to make it, if you like a little bit more of a compressed look, that's definitely one way to do it. Sometimes it's helpful to put the time needed. I found that to be more challenging, frankly, than anything else, but some people like to have it in there, and then you're going to have your deadline. And you would still want to have an internal and external deadline. Okay, real-time status. What does that mean? Real-time status means that your task matrix has to be accessible at all times, editable by everyone at all times, and that all the status changes have to be visible. And I go back to the fact that it needs to be online, and everybody has to have adequate permissions to access, edit, and view the central task matrix document. And that's a really important part of setting this up in a way that is smooth and functional, because people have to start using it as a way to keep track of their own workload. And it has to become a way for people to communicate with each other about their workload. Which brings me to the third and final tool you are going to learn during this course, which is the matrix review. The matrix review is a meeting. It takes place once a week, same time, same day, every week. It will last no more than 90 minutes. Why? Because people cannot stomach longer than that. 90 minutes is long enough. It will engage everybody that is on the meeting. It will require real-time updating of the task matrix, but it is not a matter meeting. No one case can overtake the conversation because everybody else will lose usefulness from this meeting. This is a cleanup time. This is a time where all of what everybody's been doing all week gets put together and everybody sits down and everybody looks at the task matrix together, and the scrum master who is in charge goes through it as people are talking. Hey, wait a minute, I thought you'd done this. Yep, okay, but now that we've done this, we need to add something else. Right. You still want a scrum master, you still want the matter owner, and you still want your team to be there. And the reason you want the matter owner is because this is when they get to do their wish list. I want this motion, I want that, and I want this thing, I want this. Great. Put it all in there. And the scrum master writes it up on the matrix review and starts saying, okay, well, hold on. You want that motion and that motion, but they can't be in the same week because that'd be the same person and they don't have enough bandwidth. So we're going to have to either split it or move it out. This is where that kind of work takes place. Okay. Just going through it and being like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do. Now, if it starts becoming, well, should we do this or should we do that? And it starts becoming a strategy conversation. No. Like, okay, this matter seems like you guys need a matter meeting. You're going to have an ad hoc specific meeting to discuss the strategy. And this is a great way to divide up the what and the how. Because the matrix review is still about the how. It is a meeting to review the tasks, the bandwidth, the distribution, the workloads. The what goes to a separate meeting where you just get to talk about what are we going to do. And out of that meeting, sure, there'll be a whole bunch of tasks. They will fed back into the task matrix and we go back to trying to divvy it up in a way that makes sense and doesn't burn out people. The matrix review is an absolutely phenomenal tool. And here are a couple of things for implementation, because I'm sure you're thinking about this. First, you might be telling yourself, there's no way, there's zero way, Juji, there is no way I can get through all of my cases in 90 minutes. It's never going to happen. Okay, that's fine. What you do is that you break it up. You're like, these 10 cases, these 10 cases, these 10 cases, right? You have group A, B, and C. You look at group A on week 1, group B on week 2, group C on week 3, week 4, you start back at group 1, group A. ABC, ABC, ABC. That means that each of the cases gets looked at least once every 2 or every 3 weeks. The other thing that you might want to consider doing is saying that each case cannot take up more than X, right? More than 9 minutes, more than 5 minutes, more than 6 minutes, whatever it may be. If you're putting like 50 cases in 1 week, then you know that each case can only take about 2.5, 3 minutes, right? Some will take longer, some will take shorter. And you'll have the Scrum Master to enforce that. This way it ensures that nobody gets bogged down on every one case. And if the case needs more than that, then you, as I said, set it aside, go do an ad hoc meeting. It needs a case matter. You need a case meeting to talk about it. That's perfectly good. The other thing is you want to have somebody who is actually actively updating the task matrix as you're going along. And importantly, you want it broadcast so everybody sees it. It was actually really effective when we had remote teams because everybody was on Zoom. And so we all had it on there and we would see the person editing it and changing it in real time. And you can also have it on a separate screen or on the same screen in small and make your own edits as you're going along because you want to update stuff. You say, oh, you know what, that deadline needs to move or whatever. The matrix review meeting is also a really good time to start talking about moving deadlines, right? This is when, I was doing that sorting a few minutes ago. This is when you would do that sorting and take a look and be like, whoa. Sam's got 12 motions due in the next 3 days. That's not going to happen. And that's when you start saying, okay, well then new task. You need to ask for an extension because we need to move stuff out. Or, hey, Juji, you're running a little light. How about you take that motion instead? This is where it happens. All of that reassignment, all of that teamwork, all of that bandwidth protection exercise, it happens at the matrix review meeting. I used to do the matrix review meeting Friday afternoons, and I thought that was fantastic. Really. I would start it at 2:30. It would take an hour and a half, and everybody was done by about 4. And it was fine. 4:30. And it was a really good way to use the last few hours where everybody's just exhausted anyway, but it gives you a way to just, everybody takes meetings and everything else that's like really intense off their schedule. Friday afternoon, you basically get to hang out with your coworkers, not in a high tension, high conflict kind of environment. And you get to do cleanup and you get to get yourself nice and ready for Monday. And that to me was an absolutely fantastic use of that time because, brain drain is real and we were exhausted anyway. And it was the best thing that we could do with what was left of our energy. And it also set us up for a really nice, crisp start on Monday morning.